The term cannabis or hemp indicates the plant in its entirety, i.e. the roots, stem, flowers, and leaves. It can be divided into 3 subspecies: sativa, indica, or ruderalis, which differ both in the size of the plants and in the concentrations of the active ingredients, and therefore also in the effects induced by their respective derivatives. The term marijuana, on the other hand, indicates a substance obtained from the dried female inflorescences of the hemp plant. Hashish, on the other hand, is a substance that is obtained from the resin of cannabis, a gooey brown-colored substance. The cultivation of hemp dates back to 10,000 years ago and was used by man to obtain numerous products, from textile fibers to sails for naval fleets, from the production of paper to fuel oil for lighting. Cannabis is also used for recreational, spiritual, religious, and therapeutic purposes. Marijuana can be consumed in several ways: smoked through normal hand-rolled papers called joints, or using thicker and darker papers made with tobacco leaves, and in this case, it is called blunt. If, on the other hand, you mix marijuana and tobacco, it is called a spliff. Marijuana can also be smoked with a bong, also called a water pipe. Marijuana can also be consumed by inhaling the smoke using vaporizers. You can also eat food with cooked marijuana, such as cakes, biscuits, or candies, or drink it in the form of tea, for example. All drugs change the way the brain and neurons work, nerve cells that are tasked with exchanging messages, by releasing chemicals called neurotransmitters that bind to receptors on other neurons. Let's see how marijuana affects the brain and therefore its mechanism of action. Let's see how marijuana affects the brain and therefore its mechanism of action. Marijuana is a psychoactive substance with a psychotropic action that is capable of altering the physical and mental abilities of those who consume it. It contains over 500 chemicals, of which over 120 are psychoactive compounds and are called phytocannabinoids. The most important are delta-9-tetrahydrocannabinol, also called THC, cannabidiol, also called CBD. THC is the best known of the active ingredients in cannabis, which exerts a psychoactive action on the central nervous system. The THC content in cannabis sativa is 0.5%/1% in the large leaves, 1/3% in the small leaves, and variable in the flowers, in a percentage ranging from 10 to 27%. CBD, on the other hand, is a chemical compound that does not seem to have any psychotropic effect, but only anti-inflammatory, analgesic, and relaxing. CBD has not in fact been classified as narcotic by the European Court of Justice, even if extracted from cannabis, which is considered as narcotic. We have therefore said that the compounds present within the cannabis plant are called phytocannabinoids, i.e. cannabinoids generated by plants, therefore they are exogenous cannabinoids. Our body also contains what are called endogenous cannabinoids, or rather endocannabinoids, a group of lipid messengers, united by the ability to interact with cannabinoid receptors, that is a class of receptors that bind to cannabinoids. Currently, 2 types of cannabinoid receptors are known: the CB1 receptor and the CB2 receptor. Thanks to some studies, it has been possible to map the precise locations of cannabinoid receptors in the body. CB1 receptors are found mainly in the brain, particularly in the basal ganglia, and to a lesser extent in the cerebellum, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and amygdala. CB1 receptors are also present in cells of the lungs, liver, muscles, reproductive organs, and heart. CB2 receptors, on the other hand, are found mainly in the T cells of the immune system, with the highest density of the spleen and also in some areas of the central nervous system. Endocannabinoids and its receptors constitute the so-called endocannabinoid system, which intervenes in the regulation of the cerebral circuits of vomiting, in the mechanisms that modulate the appetite and regulate memory, but also in fertility, and in the progression of pregnancy. One of the best-known endocannabinoids is anandamide, which plays an important role in pain and appetite regulation. THC has a similar structure to the brain's anandamide and therefore activates the same endocannabinoid receptors. We therefore have two molecules, anandamide and THC, that want to bind to the same receptor. What is the mechanism of action of marijuana? When someone smokes marijuana, THC quickly passes from the lungs into the bloodstream, which carries it to organs throughout the body, including the brain. THC binds to cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2, which we talked about before, causing the release of dopamine, thus generating the typical sensation of pleasure. However, higher levels of dopamine are released than seen in response to natural gratifying stimuli. The cannabinoid receptors of the brain are so deceived by THC that having a chemical structure similar to anandamide, it is able to be recognized. In simple terms, imagine the receptor as a lock and the anandamide as the only key that can open it. THC, on the other hand, is a false key, but identical to the original, which manages to open the same lock. THC, once bound to the receptors, affects all those areas that have a greater number of cannabinoid receptors, altering the various mental and physical functions. THC thus interferes with the ability of endocannabinoids to bind to receptors, and therefore with the regulation of the main functions of our body. Taking marijuana means activating those receptors that had to be regulated autonomously by the body, consequently causing imbalances. What are the short and long-term effects of marijuana on the brain? Is its consumption safe or dangerous for health? We will see it in detail in an upcoming video. As soon as available, you can find it by clicking above.